the oila that was done on Mount Sinai right before the Torah was given, was that oila a lamb or was it a bull? Because the pasuk is unclear, a little unclear how to read it. It does say bulls at the end of the pasuk, but that word bulls could be that it's referring to what it just mentioned, the peace offering, or it might be going back as well on the previous statement, which was the burnt offering. So in other words, it might be saying that both of them were bulls, or it might be saying that just the peace offering was bulls, and it's leaving vague what the burnt offering was. Now, what could the burnt offering have been? So we just mentioned, our Gemara is just dealing with, well, we're not even sure what burnt offering that was. It might have been the daily burnt offering, or it might have been the burnt offering of the holidays. So according to the opinion that it was the daily burnt offering, logically it should have been a sheep, because that's what it says. That's that you're supposed to bring one lamb in the morning and one lamb in the evening. So it would have been a lamb. Seemingly it should have been a lamb. So our Gemara that's questioning how to read it, is our Gemara saying that if it was one of a daily burnt offering, it might have been a bull? Is there such a thought that it could have been a bull? I mean, is that the Gemara's question? Maybe the Gemara is only asking the question according to the other opinion. The other opinion says that it was a holiday offering, burnt offering. It was a holiday burnt offering. Well, a holiday burnt offering could have been, actually, I have a list of all the sacrifices, and the holiday burnt offerings could be all three. It could be a bull, a sheep, or a goat. But holiday burnt offerings, the oilas re'iyah, is a sheep, goat, or cattle. Cattle, I think, includes a bull, right? Would that be considered cattle? I believe so. Cattle is it includes from the 8th day until the 3rd birthday, so basically it could have been all three. So our Gemara is wondering what korban, what sacrifice, what animal did they use for this burnt offering? So seemingly the Gemara's question is referring to, if you're talking about the holiday offering, burnt offering, it makes sense. There's a question. We're not sure how to read it. But if it would be according to the opinion that it was a daily burnt offering, well, the daily burnt offering was a lamb in the morning, a lamb in the evening. So, that's what it would seem that the question of the Gemara would only be according to one opinion. But Teves tells us that according to the opinion of Oilas Riyah, that it was the holiday burnt offering, yeah, for sure the Gemara is asking the question. But Teves says, even according to the other opinion, the Gemara is also asking the question. Why? It's a holiday burnt offering. A holiday burnt offering could be could have been a bull. The answer is that we just concluded the Gemara that Rabbi Yossi Aglili holds that the burnt offering of holidays switched from the way things were to the way things are after the giving of the Torah. So it's very possible. I'm sorry, not of the daily burnt offering. We just said switch. That before the giving of the Torah, they didn't do the hefshet v'nituach, the skinning and the cutting, and certain parts had to be cut. That's changed before the giving of the Torah and after the giving of the Torah. Well, if that changed, it could be the animal changed as well. So in other words, we just explained that even if you say that it's the same obligation before the giving of the Torah and after the giving of the Torah, the daily burnt offering never stopped. We always brought that burnt offering, but there were differences. It started from before the giving of the Torah, but there were small differences the way it was done then and the way it was done afterwards. That's what Rabbi Yisrael says. So according to that, the Gemara's question is also, well, maybe it was a bull. Maybe it started as a bull and it ended after the giving of the Torah. We did it as sheep, as it was clarified at the giving of the Torah that it has to be a sheep. And even though we got all the details in event, but there was a difference in the obligation. The obligation was a little different before the giving of the Torah. So according to Teves, the Gemara's question is going according to both opinions. Now, what's really interesting is that there's a Ramban, and this is a Ramban on this pasuk in the Chumash in Parshas Mishpatim. So it mentions over there that they brought these sacrifices of parim, of bulls. And the Ramban says the reason that they brought to Hashem parim, bulls, was because the Yidden, all the days that they were in the desert, they were afraid of the attribute of strict judgment. And this was their mistake with regard to the golden calf, that they ended up worshiping the golden calf. And now they sacrificed burnt offerings and slaughtered peace offerings. All of them were bulls. So how is the Ramban learning? That he's learning that bulls, when it says in the Chumash bulls, it actually is going back on the burnt offerings. Now, as we know, bulls is referring to the peace offerings, but does it also go back on what it said earlier in the verse to the burnt offerings? Again, let me read you the verse. The verse says, "Vayishlach esnare b'nei Yisrael." He sent the youths of the Jewish people, which we said meant the firstborns, and they brought up burnt offerings, and they slaughtered peace offerings to Hashem, bulls. So definitely the peace offerings were bulls, but were also the burnt offerings bulls? It doesn't say clearly in the verse if the burnt offerings were also bulls. So our Gemara asked this question, and it ends off with a teku. Our Gemara asked this question, it ends off with a teku. Now, what's really interesting is that this Ramban in Chumash, the Ramban says that it was bulls, even the burnt offering. Our Gemara says teku, we don't know. But the Ramban says, no, it was bulls. The Ramban in Chumash says that he explains the pasuk that it was bulls, and he says that this was because they wanted specifically to bring bulls then, because it had to do with the fact that they were in the desert. They were very nervous of this attribute of strict justice, and they brought up bulls, similar to why when a kohen, anointed kohen, a kohen gadol makes a mistake, or the bezdin makes a mistake, what sacrifice do they bring? They bring a sacrifice of bulls. When a person makes a mistake with worshiping an idol, the bull is the sacrifice. Par avodah zarah, it's called. This par helam davar shel tzibur. This par kohen mashiach. All of these are bulls. So all these animals of sacrifices are somehow connected to protection from the attribute of strict justice. And these sins cause the attribute of strict justice. So bulls are atonement against that attribute of strict justice. So the Yidden brought their offerings from bulls because they were nervous of this attribute of strict justice. For some reason in the desert, there was an attribute of strict justice. And the Ramban goes into this more when he talks about the ego, the sin of the golden calf, about the attribute of strict justice and what they were trying to do. But here, the Ramban explains that that's why they brought parim, was because they were trying, this is like a Kabbalistic explanation, that they were trying to save themselves, protect themselves from the attribute of strict justice. So that's why they would have brought bulls for these sacrifices, which is definitely an interesting insight, especially because the verse, the way we have it, it has an esnachto, which means that there's a comma in the middle of the verse. And so what it really is saying is he sent the youths of the children of Israel, and they brought up burnt offerings, comma, and they slaughtered peace offerings to Hashem, bulls, which implies that the bulls, at least the way we have it written, that the bulls is going on the peace offerings, and it's really vague and leaving it unclear what was the burnt offerings. And our Gemara ends with a teku. We don't know, even though the trup implies that it was not bulls. But our Gemara says teku, we don't know. And the Ramban says that it was bulls.
Rabbi, that's what he explains. It's more like a semicolon.
Semicolon. Okay, well, we'll call it a semicolon. Okay.
It really divides it. It really divides like two separate thoughts sometimes. Right. Next to each other.
So, right. Okay. So that would be a semicolon or a colon?
Yeah, I think a semicolon. No, semicolon.
Semicolon. Okay. Semicolons. But it's very interesting, this Ramban, that he wants to say that it was part of it. That it was, and he gives a reason behind it. Very interesting. Okay. Well, so back to the Gemara. So the Gemara says that we're not sure what this what the way to read this is. Now, the Gemara ends off with a take. Now, Mordechai mentioned that there's a Gemara in Yuma that says that we have 5 psukim. We're not sure how to read them. And there's a certain word that's like in the middle. It either goes on the previous sentence or on the forward, the sentence afterwards. So it's there are 5. Now, why is this different than why doesn't it mention this there? And why is this different than those cases? So in those, it would seem like this falls into the same category. So Taisus is very unclear what he says, but what it seems that Taisus means is that over there, it either goes on the previous sentence or it goes on the future sentence. It can't be both. You have to choose one or the other. Our Gemara is talking about a word that definitely goes on the on one part of the sentence. The question is if it also goes on another part of the sentence. So, in truth, let's say because we have the trup, which is the cantillation of how the Torah is read. So what we should be able to do is use that trup, use the cantillation marks, and based on that, we should be able to figure out if it goes on the earlier part as well, or just on the part that's right next to. And the cantillation marks should be able to tell us that. The only problem is that the rabbis were unsure what the correct cantillation marks are. In the case in Yuma, it's different. We have the cantillation marks, but you can't use the cantillation marks to uproot the understanding of the verse. In other words, over there, if we're going to use the cantillation marks, the trup, and we're going to say, oh, the trup says it this way, this must be the meaning. No, the trup is not enough to say, you read it this way, you can't read it that way, that this is the correct way and not the other way. It can't go. In our pasuk, we could use the trup if we were sure of the trup. So if we were sure of the trup in our pasuk, then we would say, oh, well, the Trupp says it this way. So that would mean that it's going back on both, or the Trupp says it that way. That would mean that it's not going back on both. It's only going on this part, because the Trupp will be able to be used to add an additional point, but it won't be able to be used to push off to say this explanation is wrong. We can't use the Trupp for that. In other words, the Trupp is not enough of a source to be able to say, read it this way and don't read it that way. That way is wrong. Our Gemara is not saying, our Gemara is not really, you don't have to choose one or the other. Our Gemara could be both. Both could be correct, or maybe just one is correct. So therefore, for us, the Trupp would be enough of a proof. And that's why our case is not connected. Our case is not in a similar situation as those 5 cases. Now, the only thing is, in our case, it seems that we're not sure of the Trupp. And in fact, our Gemara says that if we would know how to translate it, we would make the difference would be how the Trupp should be. But we can't use the Trupp to tell us, because we're not sure of what the cantillation marks are really. Over there, it wouldn't even help, even if you have the cantillation marks. So at least that's one of the understandings of Teves. It's a little unclear how he says it, the wording, but that's what it seems is his meaning. So that's the previous Gemara about the cantillation, about the word, what type of animal it was. Now, the truth of the matter is, once you say this, that our Trupp, the rabbis were unsure of the Trupp. So it could be that the Ramban, because our Gemara ends with Teku, the Ramban takes the license of saying, okay, well, we don't know really what the Trupp is. Our Gemara is basically saying we're not sure what the Trupp is, just because we have a tradition in our Chumash to use an asnachta there. The Ramban maybe is using our Gemara as a source that esnachta, that semicolon that's there in the cantillation marks is obviously not a full-fledged source because our Gemara says teku. Our Gemara ends off that we're not really sure. So maybe that's why the Ramban has the license to explain that the meaning of that verse is bulls, that even the burnt offerings are bulls against the cantillation marks, because our Gemara basically says that we're not sure of what the cantillation marks really are. At least that's an understanding of our Gemara. Otherwise, the question would be, why don't we look at the cantillation marks and use that as a proof to how to translate the verse? And our Gemara says teku. Our Gemara ends off that we're not sure. What do you mean you're not sure? You have the cantillation marks. It must be that the cantillation marks that we have are not 100%. We're not 100% sure that that's the right cantillation marks. So if we're not sure that that's the right cantillation marks, therefore the Ramban says that according to the understanding that the Ramban explains regarding the Cheta Egel, so he says, according to that, you understand this as well, that they were nervous of the midas hadin, they were nervous of the attribute of justice, and therefore they constantly were bringing bulls. So it would make sense that they brought bulls for the burnt offering as well. So that would be maybe an understanding, a little understanding of the Ramban. Okay, so then we have the next Gemara. And that was, the question was, what was the difference between these two ways of reading that verse? So one was either how to cantillate the words, and the other was, if a person makes a vow, I'm going to bring a sacrifice similar to the sacrifice that the Jewish people brought in the desert. So if we know that it was bulls, then that would be what he would be obligated to bring. If not, it might have been specifically sheep, because the daily the daily Talmud was sheep. That would be logical that if there would seem to be a reason why they should have brought a lamb, because that was the daily sacrifice. So that's the Gemara's, that would be the difference between these two ways of learning. And the Gemara ends off with Teku. Teku, Tishbi, Yataretz, Kushias, V'ibayas. Yoanavi is going to answer these questions. Okay, now we're going to continue on the bottom of Daf Vav Amud Beis, the bottom line. So the bottom line brings that Mishnah in Peah that we started. And the bottom line says, Tanan Hassam, we learned over there in Tractate Peah, we're on page 6b, bottom line. We learned over there in the Mishnah in Peah, Elu Dvarim She'en Lahem Shir. Here are the things that don't have a measure. At least, we'll soon see to what extent that means. But they don't have a measure. Now, what we do know is that there are laws that do have measures. For example, how big a mikveh has to be, 40 sa, or the amount of eating is kazayas. There are certain rules that we do know, but here are things that we don't have clarity on what the measurement is. So the Mishnah says these are things that don't have a measurement, and it says hapeya, the peya is the corners of the field that we're obligated to leave those corners for the poor people. And the Torah doesn't say clearly how much is a corner. Now, the rabbis did give a measurement for this, and that is 1 out of 60. Now, the owner of the field leaves the corners, and the poor people come and they take the stuff from the corners of the field. Now, if the owner is poor himself, he's not allowed to take from his own field, but it's for other people. The next case is V'habikurim. Bikurim is the mitzvah of the Shivas Haminim, the 7 species that a person has to bring to the Beis Hamikdash, thank Hashem, and give them to the Kohen. And it doesn't say clearly, again, you bring from the first fruits of the 7 species, and it doesn't say how much you would have to bring. The question about Bikurim is there any clarity rabbinically how much to bring? Biblically, you don't have any measurement. But what about rabbinically? Now, our Gemara doesn't seem to have any clarity as how much it would be rabbinically. But there is a Yerushalmi that says that midrabanan, you would need to separate 1/60th. So, and the Rambam seems to follow that, and maybe he finds some hint to it in the Gemara, the Babylonian Talmud. Otherwise, it would be problematic. Why is the Rambam giving a verdict based on the Jerusalem Talmud if the Babylonian Talmud seems to imply not that way? So they try to bring a source for the Rambam. But in any event, it's a little unclear if Bikurim have any measurement whatsoever. The Vahad Ra'oyin. And Ra'oyin is the mitzvah of being Oila Regel, going to the Beis HaMikdash and bringing Karbanis, the burnt offering. And so Ra'ayin is one of these where it's unclear where it doesn't say how much, which we'll soon see what that means. Ugmilos chasadim, and also gmilos chasadim, to do kindness with other people. Now, the examples that I gave on Friday was like Bikur Cholim, visiting the sick, or the same thing would be Nichom Avelim, comforting the mourners, or burying the dead. So there is no measurement of how much time a person should spend on it. However, I do have to mention, and I think I did mention this on Friday, that there is a limit with regard to charity, financially, how much a person should give for tzedakah. And that amount is a chaimish, 20%. So when it says gemilos chasadim, doing acts of kindness, it's specifically referring to acts of kindness with your body. But with your money, there is actually a measurement. There is a measure, and that's a chaimish, a fifth. Now, the Talmud Torah, and also studying Torah, and there is no measurement. There is no measurement how much Torah you could study. The sky is the limit. Now, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan says, that, by the way, we're on page 7a. If you lost the place, we're on the second line. 7a, the second line. That we thought to say, the Ra'ayin doesn't have a shear. We thought to say that Lamaila, that means that there's no measurement of how much you could spend on the korban maximum. You could spend as much as you want. You want to spend $500, you could spend $500, $1,000, $1,000. Doesn't matter. There's no maximum measure of how much you spend on the korban, the burnt offering for the holidays. Aval yesh lo shir lamata. But we thought to say that when it comes to the minimum amount, that we thought to say there is a shir because we have our Mishnah. And our Mishnah seems to say pretty clearly, at least, there are two opinions, but there is opinions as to the minimum shear. And so we thought to say that would be that according to, based on what we know, that there is a minimum shear of ra'ayin. So we would learn the Mishnah that it says there's no shear, there's no measure. It must mean maximum measure. But minimum measure, we know that there is. In other words, how do you reconcile the Mishnah in Peah and the Mishnah in Chagiga? You have a contradiction here. The Mishnah in Peah says there is no shear. The Mishnah in Chagiga says there's a minimum shear. According to Beis Hillel, it's 1 ma. According to Beis Shammai, it's 2 ma. There is a minimum shear. So how do you reconcile it? So we thought to say that the Mishnah that says there is no measurement is talking about maximum. But minimum, there is a measurement. And that's our Mishnah. Ad Shabbat Rabbi Yoshaya, until Rabbi Yoshaya, the scholar, the great one, the Gadol, the great Rabbi Yoshaya the great, the Limed, and he taught the Ra'ayin doesn't have a shear, not below and not above. But the rabbis gave a shear. But the rabbis gave it a shear. So Rabbi Shaya clarified with us that really there is a measurement Midra, the measurement that we learned in our Mishnah is really midrabanan, that it's rabbinic. So which means that the initial thought of the Gemara was that it was biblical, and then we needed to reconcile the two Mishnayos, the Mishnah in Peah and the Mishnah in Chagiga. And the conclusion was that Rabbi Shaya revealed to us, no, that what we learned is really, it's really rabbinic. It's not biblical. We learned in our Mishnah in Chagiga, it's rabbinic. Now, what does it mean, Re'iyah? If it would just say the Re'iyah, so we would know that it's talking about the carbon, the burnt offering. This that it says Re'iyah, it must also mean something else. That it must mean also the seeing, which means coming to the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. And what it sounds like it's saying is that you could come as many times as you want, and maybe the more times you come, you're sort of like you're getting a mitzvah. And so the question would be, if it's referring to that, would they have all the same laws? Would you need to bring a carbon every time you come? So you're going to come more than once. Would you need to bring a carbon every time you come, or is that not part of this? What, in other words, what is the criteria of fulfilling that extra mitzvah of re'ayin, that it means that it has that additional meaning, that it would mean to come and show your face? What would be the rules behind it? So the Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan Amar Re'iyas Panim Ba'azara, that all you need to do is show your face in the courtyard, and you don't need to bring a carbon every time you come. Reish Lakish Amar, Reish Lakish says Re'iyas Panim Ba'carbon, that you do need to bring a carbon every time you come to the Azara. You would need to bring a sacrifice. So that is the machlokes of how to fulfill this mitzvah that has an unlimited element to it, where it says ein leishir, doesn't have a measure. You can fulfill it many times, and the criteria of it depends on Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish if you have to bring a carbon each time when you come. Now, the Gemara then says, the Ikar Haregel, on the main part of the holiday, which means that the first day of the holiday, the Ikar Haregel, Rashi says, B'Yom Tov Rishon, the first day of the holiday, Be'ikar haregel, kulei alma loy pligi, they don't argue. The whole world doesn't argue, meaning Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish don't argue. Dir'iyas panim carbon, that you do need to bring, you show your face with a carbon on the first day of the holiday. You definitely need to bring a carbon. Now, however, when do they argue about fulfilling the mitzvah extra? You could do more ra'ayins, you could do more re'iyas, you could come more often without a carbon. They argue about the other days of the holiday when you need to bring a carbon. As long as all the time that you come and you bring, no one argues that we will accept your carbon. So if you come and you bring, meaning bring a carbon, No one argues that we will accept that they will accept your korban. Ki pligi, what do they argue about? The asa v'loy isi, if you come and you don't bring a korban. The Rabbi Yochanan Savar, Rabbi Yochanan holds re'iyas panim ba'azara, that it means that re'iyas panim in the azara, it's enough. You show your face. The chol emas da'asi, like tzarech la'asuye. As long all the time that you come, you don't need to bring a korban. Reish Lakish Amar, but Reish Lakish says re'iyas panim b'korban, that when you show your face or seeing your face, seeing the face is always done with a korban. The chol emas da'asi, all the times you come, tzarech la'asuye, you would need to bring a korban. So that's basically the discussion here of between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, that each time that you come to the Beis Hamikdash, that's extra. Would you need to bring korban? The first time, of course, you need to bring korban. Would you need to bring a korban on the other days? Now, what's interesting is there's a big discussion. What happens if you come on the first day and a few times? So, for sure, the first time you come, you're supposed to bring korban coin to everyone, and you shouldn't be coming without a korban. Okay. But what about the next time you come on the same day? If you come on the same day, I'm just sharing with you, there is a discussion about this, that would you need to bring a korban each time because it's still the Ikar HaRegel on the first day? Or is it enough? You came once, you fulfilled the mitzvah of bring the korban. Now you come more often. Anyway, maybe we'll discuss it tomorrow, but that is something that's discussed. Now, the Gemara continues and it asks questions. And the Gemara asks a question on Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Lakish asks this question on Rabbi Yochanan. Eisvei Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish asked the question to Rabbi Yochanan. Really? You can come to the Beis Hamikdash without bringing a korban? You come to the courtyard and don't bring a korban? V'lo yeiro panai reikam. It says, don't come, they should not see my face empty-handed. Right? They should not see my face, Hashem says. They shouldn't see my face empty-handed, which means that you should bring a korban each time. So the Gemara answers, Amar Le, Rabbi Yochanan answered, Amar Le, he said to him, the Ikar HaRegel, that's referring to on the first day, that everyone agrees that on the first day, you would need to bring a korban. And that's what the Le Yero Panei Rekel is. Amar Le, so, I'm sorry, Esvei, so he asked him another question. V'lo Yero Panei Rekel, it says, they should not see my face empty-handed, and that's the pasuk. And so this Brisa brings a question from a source of Brisa that it says, "Don't see my face empty-handed," and it refers to the Brisa says this pasuk means bizvachim, with an animal, and you can't. Bizvachim generally excludes birds and korban mincha. Meal offering. Zvachim is something slaughtered, and bird is excluded from that because a bird is malika. They would use their fingernail to slaughter the bird, so the bird would not be included in zvachim. Zvachim would have to be an actual animal. So the Gemara says that they shouldn't see my face empty-handed. The Brisa says this means zvachim. They have to bring sacrifices. And that implies, the Brisa says, Ata oimer b'zvachim, you say it means zvachim. The Brisa continues, and it says, maybe it also means with birds and with meal offerings. V'dinu. And it's logic. It's logic that it would need to be with zvachim. It would need to be with a sacrifice. Nemra, Chagiga, it says Chagiga, the mitzvah of Chagiga lehedyot, that it goes, that a portion of it is eaten to the regular Jew. The Chagiga is the peace offering. So it says Chagiga lehedyot, v'nemer re'iyah legavaya, and it says the burnt offering goes to Hashem. And so both of them we need to bring on a holiday. So ma Chagiga hamura lehedyot, just like the Chagiga that it says regarding a regular Jew, a layman, it comes through zvachim, through a sacrifice of an animal, that you need to sacrifice an actual animal. You have to put the fats on the mizbeach, and all the laws. And when it talks, since it talks about the fats, obviously it has to be an actual animal. And meal offering, the bird offering doesn't have that. So so we compare the two, and that if the Chagiga needs to be a zevach, needs to be an actual animal sacrifice, so also the re'iyah, which is the burnt offering for seeing Hashem, that also has to be a actual sacrifice. Umahein zevachim, and what are these sacrifices that you're bringing for Re'iyah? The Gemara says it means oilos. It's a burnt offering. Now you're saying that it means this is a continuation of the Bryce. It sounds like it's two people talking, but it's like the same person talking, and he's saying maybe it should be this, maybe that. How do I know that I'm saying that? So it's like one person talking, but it says Ata Omer, you are saying that it means oilos. Maybe it actually means that it's a mitzvah to bring a peace offering. How do I know that I'm supposed to bring a burnt offering when I don't show my face empty-handed? Vidinhu, and it is logical. It is logically learned. Nemra, it says Chagiga lehedyot. Again, it says the mitzvah bring a Chagiga, which a portion of it is eaten by the regular person, lehedyot, the layman. V'nemra re'iyah legavaya, and it says re'iyah, the animal, the sacrifice re'iyah for gavaya for Hashem, and we have to bring both on the holidays. Ma Chagiga mur lehedyot v'roi loy, just like the Chagiga is fit for the person who it's meant for, the hedyot, the layman, that it has food for him. Also the re'iyah that's meant for Hashem, it's what's fit for him, which means that it would be totally burnt for Hashem. Now, the truth of the matter is the peace offering was not fully for the individual, but because it was majority for the individual, that was considered it's for the individual. It's peroiloi, it's fit for the individual, and because the basically the majority. There are parts that went to the that were burned, but its majority is for the individual, so it's considered like it's for the individual. So when it comes to the Gemara saying, so we have to find something similar to that for Hashem, the only similar animal that would be majority for Hashem would be the oila, which is actually totally burnt to Hashem except the skin. So that's the Gemara's logic. That's the this is basically a brisa. Now the brisa continues and says v'chein b'din, and also it's logically learned that it should be a korban oila, it should be a burnt offering. It would make sense as well that your table should not be full and your master's table is going to be empty. Now, what is your master's table? That's the Mizbeach. It shouldn't be empty of karbanos, and you're going to have your peace offering, and you're going to be enjoying it, and your master's table is going to be empty. So it would make sense that there should be a sacrifice for your master, and that would be the karban oila, the burnt offering. So, how is this a question on Rabbi Yochanan? Reish Lakish is bringing this brisa, and it would seem to be a question on Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish is saying that how the karban chagiga was meant to be any day. In other words, you could bring the karban chagiga any of the days of the holiday. So it would seem Reish Lakish is basically saying that you have this logic on the other days of the holiday as well. That you're going to have your chagiga. What about Hashem's table? It's going to be empty. So Amar Lei. So Rabbi Yochanan answers Reish Lakish that we explain this brisa to mean the Ikar HaRegel, that it's talking about the first day of the holiday. That even though, right, if you miss bringing a chagiga, peace offering on the first day, true, you could bring it on the other days, but the main time is on the first day, and therefore the logic would be that you should also bring a burnt offering on the first day, and that would be enough and it would suffice. And the next day, the next time you come to the show your face and fulfill the mitzvah of ra'ayin, you don't need to bring a karban. That's Rabbi Yochanan's answer.
Rabbi.
Yes.
The other days, except for the last day, is normally called Chol HaMoed. So couldn't you exclude those middle days because they're called something different? And here you're being told that Re'iyah should be on the Regel.
I think they're all called Regel. They might not be Yom Tov. They're called Chag. They're you know what I mean? They're the choil of the Mayed. They're called the Mayed. They're just not the actual. It doesn't have the full extent of the laws of Yom Tov, but it's still a regel, still part of the holiday.
But that's a distinction that Rabbi Yochanan should be able to use to answer Reish Lakish. Because Reish Lakish is basically saying everything.
Just one second, Ezra. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
he's saying that every day is equivalent.
Right.
That's basically what he's saying. And the Torah is making a difference, makes a very specific distinction between the first and last days and the middle days. And Rabbi Yochanan should be able to use that to answer, no, it's not necessary for those days. Maybe not for the last day because it's equivalent in strength, let's say, as the first day. But because I'm looking at it from the standpoint of a regular person. Not everybody can bring, all these korbanot that Reish Lakish is trying to put upon every individual who shows up. You could bankrupt an individual, especially the person who really doesn't have very much.
Right.
I would say, Reish Lakish, rethink what you're saying in terms of the normal person. Not everybody is a chaver who has the ability to provide what you want to provide. I mean, we understand what Hashem is saying. Don't come before me empty-handed. It's not nice to come as a guest empty-handed. And so therefore you should bring something. All right. But for people to then, we have to add this, and we have to add this, and we have to add this. This gets to be a little bit over the top, especially for the individual who doesn't have.
Okay, so I hear you. So this is the thing. Number one, the person doesn't, according to Reish Lakish, he doesn't have to come every single day and show his face. He fulfilled his mitzvah, and he brought his carbon, and that's, he did his obligations. We are talking here about someone who's doing extra, and when you're doing extra, sometimes you do need to pay in order to do the extras, and this is going to be such a case going to Reish Lakish. Now, with regard to the question that you asked earlier about the fact that Chol HaMoed would maybe be a room for a distinction, the only problem is that the law of Chagiga applies equally to all to any day that's not the first. The law of Chagiga applies to equally. So the last days, the Chol HaMoed days, it's the same law of Chagiga, and therefore, because of that, the fact is there will be Chagigas being brought, and maybe no Eilas Re'iyas. So there is, the question of Reish Lakish will still be a valid question. The only answer that Rabbi Yochanan is basically giving is the fact that the main holiday is really the first day, and that's when this really applies. But in Reish Lakish's view, that, the fact is there might, people might not bring it the first day, they're going to bring it on the other days, you'll have Chagigas without Re'iyas, you're going to have this issue, even Chol HaMoed. So, so the answer that you want to give, I don't think it'll work for Rabbi Yochanan. So that's my thought. So in any event, the Gemara has these. So Reish Lakish is continuing to ask on Rabbi Yochanan questions, and Reish Lakish asks another question. Eisvei Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda Aimer. He asks another question from a brayso. Rabbi Yossi, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, says, Shalosh regolim bashana nitztavu Yisrael la'alois baregel. There were 3 times a year that the Yidden are obligated to be oila regel. B'chag ha'matzos, b'chag ha'shavuos, b'chag ha'sukkos. On these 3 holidays. And ve'ein nirin chatzoyin. And when you go up to B'yola Regel, you should not be it should not be in parts. It should be complete. What does that mean? That of course the Gemara is going to explain this, but it's Bishum Shenamar. It brings a verse that it says that when you're Oila Regel, it says Kol Zechorcha. So all of the males have to be fit to come together. Now, Ve'ein Nirin Reikonin. So the first point was that we shouldn't be seen in parts, which we'll see what that means. And the other thing is we shouldn't be seen Ve'ein Nirin Reikonin. We shouldn't be seen empty. Mishum Shenamar V'lo Yero Panai Reiko. That they will not see my face empty-handed. Now, this that it mentions that that we come 3 times a year on these 3 holidays, and you can't ve'ein nirin reikonin. You can't be seen empty-handed. Reish Lakish seems to think that this obligation would apply any single day of that holiday. And so Rabbi Yochanan has to answer, no, that it applies only on the Ikar HaRegel Amar Lei. So Rabbi Yochanan answers this question as well, that it's the Ikar HaRegel, and on the main part of the holiday, that's what it's referring to, that you're not allowed to be seen empty-handed. Now, the Gemara continues and says that Rabbi Yochanan now asks a question to Reish Lakish. Eisvei Rabbi Yochanan l'Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan asks a question to Reish Lakish that it says the 3 times a year, Yeira'eh calls a chorcha, Pnei Odin Hashem, all your males will be seen by Hashem. And so it says, the Yira Yeira'eh, right? We've brought this limud before, we've discussed this before, that it says Yira, that you should see, you see the Shechina, and it also, the way it's, that's the way it's spelled, and the way it's read is Yeira'eh, right? Yeira'eh calls it, so that's the way we read it. We read it Yeira'eh, you will be seen. So, which means that you'll be seen by Hashem. You see Hashem as Yira, and Yeira'eh means you will be seen. Yeira'eh calls a chorcha, you will be seen before Hashem. Hashem comes to see you. Hashem is going to see you. So the Gemara says that ma'ani b'chinam, apatem b'chinam. Just like Hashem comes to see you, it's free. He doesn't bring a carbon. So you also come to see Hashem, should not cost. Apatem b'chinam. You also should be able to come and see Hashem for free. That there has to be an ability to see Hashem without bringing a carbon. That's the way he compares the two words, Yira and Yeirah, the way it's written, the way it's spelled. He says there has to be such an option. Yet, of course, there's an obligation to bring a carbon. It does say a verse, but there also is a time that you have to be able to be seen and to see Hashem for free. When is that time? So that time will be, according to Rabbi Yochanan, is whenever after you bring your one-time carbon, each holiday carbon, you're free now. You can go see Hashem. So because of that, the Gemara is going to switch and change the understanding of the machlokes. And the Gemara says, Ella, rather, kol heicha da'asa. Every time you come to the Azara in the Beis Hamikdash during the holiday, v'loi aisi, and you didn't bring a carbon, to kuliyamo loy pligi, everyone agrees, the ayel umeschazi v'nafik, that you can come, you can be seen, and you can leave, and you're not mechuyev to bring a carbon. He pligi, when do they argue? They also, if a person came, v'aisi, and he brought a carbon, Rabbi Yochanan, the Amar Rabbi Yochanan, that says that when it says Ra'ayin doesn't have a measure, so he says that it refers to Re'iyas Panim Ba'azara, that you could come as often as you want, you show your face in the courtyard, that Re'iyas Panim is who the Ein Lashir. Re'iyas Panim has no measure, and you could come as often as you want, you fulfill a mitzvah. L'karban yesh lashir. But when it comes to a carbon, that if you want to bring a carbon, you bring one, and if you want to bring another one, you can't. Reish Lakish Amar, Reish Lakish says that it says Ra'ayin is ein leishir, it means that that Re'iyas Panim, the carbon, that when you come with a carbon, the filu carbon nami ein lashir, that even the carbon of Re'iyas Panim has no shear, that you could bring every time you come, and they will accept it, even though you're not obligated to. So according to this, we're switching it around and saying that it's not a sin if you come without a carbon. It's a question of, are you allowed to bring more than one of these karbanis? And we'll have to continue this discussion tomorrow, but that's basically how the Gemara now switches to the meaning, because Rabbi Yochanan brought this solid proof that there has to be an option to come without bringing a carbon, which it sort of changes our understand. It definitely changes our understanding of this debate. Okay, well, that's the Gemara to be continued.